be found on GGWP's Facebook or YouTube channel. So do check that out. And by the way, before before we forget, my name is Mika. How rude of me not to introduce myself. I am an esports correspondent from the sunny isles of the Philippines, and I will be your host for this evening. So thank you all to you tuning in live, and in advance, thank you for you guys catching this a little bit later. Now, as you guys know, GGWP is an academy, is an education platform teaching gamers how to create a sustainable and long-term career in gaming. And we have three pathways in streaming, content creation, and esports athletes, and beginner, intermediate, and advanced streams. And all of our content is created from the experts in the industry, and our knowledge has been pulled from some of the most successful content creators, providing not only education, but opportunities with brands as well. So if you guys have signed up for any one of our programs, which are all free right now, by the way, so do hop on that via the website, you guys are in such good hands. And speaking of opportunities with brands, without further ado, let us welcome our speaker for tonight, because she has over 20 years of experience in sports marketing. She is the go-to for both brands and athletes looking for personal branding and endorsements. And she runs her own consultancy agency called Happy Warrior. And she is also an advisor for 3 global sports tech investment firms and an advisory board member for a number of sports tech startups. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Rebecca Longawa. Rebecca, how are you?
Good, good. It's a beautiful morning here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I'm just waiting for the sun to rise.
That's awesome, because like from where I'm from, the sun is about to set. So like, as we mentioned earlier, I'm going to throw it on over to you and pass it over to you. Please do catch it for me.
Grab it right here and toss it
That's
up.
right. That is right.
It's
now, Rebecca, I'm really...
I'm a morning person, so it's good. It's good, for sure.
That's awesome. And I think this is going to be a really exciting conversation, because I think a lot of people have questions right now, especially entering into this new normal where everybody is forced to get online, about your area of expertise. So very, very quickly, if I were to meet you out there in the world and I were to ask you, what do you do? How would you summarize that for me?
Gosh, I know it's such like a, I do have a lot of experience in like every facet of marketing because I started so long ago. And really the biggest thing that I do is I am a connector. And I have just enough experience in so many different areas in marketing, branding, sports marketing, finance, and tech, that if I don't personally have kind of a roadmap to share kind of innately based on experiences that I've had, I'm probably one person away from someone who does the thing that, you know, is the missing gap that you're working with. So I do, as you said, there's a variety of things that I specialize in and areas in which I work in, but they're not all consuming. They're a lot of times kind of weaving in and out as a subject matter expert to say, I'm listening to your problem. I can clearly see a gap, and I know ways that we're going to be able to fill it and really amplify what you're doing and get you there a lot faster than trying to, tool through 15 other people or trying to do things on your own. So I'm kind of like a professional fairy godmother.
I love that term, a professional fairy godmother. And, I'm going to give you the opportunity to brag just a little bit here, but can you please let us know, like, which brands have you worked with, especially in the sports and esports space?
Yeah, really early in my career, what got me extremely excited about sports marketing, because you don't notice it when you're a kid and you're growing up and you're just like watching different events or, sporting events. You don't necessarily notice the nuance of sponsorship. Sometimes it's very overt, but sometimes it's not. And really, really early in my career, I had an opportunity to work for a creative agency, and we planned out the loyalty programs for FedEx. How do you get fans to increase shipping? And we did that utilizing strategies, sponsorship strategies with their partnerships with the NFL and kart racing. And I was able to really like hone in on how that strategy works, what is happening really behind the scenes, How are you measuring? What are those call to actions or the trinkets in the trash and the things that you can like put out to people and experiences that they want to be a part of, in order to have, tangible KPI. So we were able to increase shipping by millions of dollars during the test times. We worked on that campaign year after year. And from there went to an all digital agency. So it turned into like the revolution of digital marketing. And my clients within that firm here in Minneapolis were groundbreaking. I mean, we were working with the NBA, Lakeshore Entertainment, working with Orlando Magic, the Minnesota Timberwolves, and Lynx. Just some really fun. I've done production for Nike and Adidas and Kangol. I worked on a television show locally here with our former governor, Jesse Ventura. I've just had so many phenomenal experiences working with brands and individuals that have, for me, like, sometimes I'm like, if I never do anything fun again, like I've lived like the coolest life, like so fun in my career. And then like more and more, like it's amazing the opportunities that come when you are flexible and just like open.
Absolutely. I mean, a resume like that, working with so many brands, especially some of the biggest names out there. I mean, can you get any bigger than the NBA, for example, NFL? So, we are so excited to have you on and to get to know exactly your perspective on branding itself. And for you to get things started, what is a personal brand? What constitutes a personal brand?
So there's layers and layers to a personal brand, but really a personal brand is, how does the world see you? And that comes through not only your skills as a streamer, a gamer, or a NBA player, or a violinist, or whatever your skill is that you're promoting, but it really also weaves in your personality. And there's within brand strategy, there's pillars that we can talk through, but it is extremely important that a personal brand is unique to you. It's your own story, and it's what makes you unique. And then how you live that out, there's definitely tips and tricks and tactics that are going to keep that really sticky and in people's minds and resonate with a specific audience. But at the end of the day, it's how the rest of the world is perceiving you, and doing that in your own personal, authentic way is paramount in being successful.
I think that was probably one of the most succinct descriptions I heard about what exactly a personal brand is. That's it. How the world sees you, how you're perceived. And let's say I'm starting out as a streamer, we're thrust into this new normal and everybody's forced to get online. So I'm trying this thing out. And how do I develop a personal brand that reflects who I am and what's unique about me when I'm just starting to find my voice out there in this new space?
I really like the idea of doing like a little personal workshop, like just sitting down with a piece of paper in a quiet space without distractions and really honing in on who you are. I will say what I've seen over the years working in-house at the NBA and watching players churn in and out and in and out. The ones who really know who they are wildly successful, not only in the sport, but later in life. And for me, what you need to do is you need to sit down and really put what that framework is together to say, what's my plan? First of all, like, who am I? Who's my story? Like, what's my story? What do I believe in? And that's hard. That's like really internal work. And it's going to take a lot of time to really craft out, how do I feel about myself? How do I want the world to perceive me? There might be some work that you need to do to really identify what makes you, multifaceted. You can't be one-dimensional and just focus on one thing. So sitting down, figuring out, how am I going to get started? Even if it's like, what should my streamer name be? What kind of branding and graphics? What resonates with me? The games that you play really speak to your future audience. So take your audience and your desired audience into consideration when you're building out the brand itself and making it approachable to whomever that audience is. And then how are you going to be consistent? Put a calendar together of when you're going to stream. What does authenticity mean to you? What type of memorable moments can you curate while you stream, really taking your own personality and creating really special, fun, repeatable, memorable moments. Who will guests be? Is there social media strategy that you need to start documenting? How are you going to react when people are nasty to you? Writing that down and having an approach and a plan saying, okay, I'm going to make a decision before I even get started as a streamer that I will never respond to trolls. I will not have knee-jerk reactions. And if you can declare that and you can put that down in your funnel, I think that's really important. And then developing your story. And that's where you might want to bring in somebody, if it's a trusted friend who's known you for a long time, who already sees you and perceives you in a certain way and can help you kind of craft that. Or if you're already making money in the space and you want to bring in an external resource that's really good at telling brand stories. I could go on and on. There's so many layers and layers to it. But if you're just starting out, you have to build out that framework. You have to understand who you are.
That is so right. And I think that's a lot of, I think that's something that a lot of streamers take for granted, that in order to make this long term, you really have to treat it like a business. You have to have a plan laid out. You have to know, kind of sort of like what that identity is. And sometimes I feel like some streamers just jump right into it without thinking about that. And then suddenly their identity can become compromised along the way. So going into that, jumping off of that, when you build that kind of personal brand, maybe with or without a plan, how does that affect what brands you can or should work with? And how do you compromise between, like, let's say a partner's online branding and your own personal brand?
Right. They have to align. You can't jump back and forth. And you have to really, once you craft your story and who you are and what you believe in, and going through your detailed brand strategy, every type of sponsorship opportunity has to marry up to that brand strategy. If it doesn't, then it doesn't fit through your filter and you have to set it aside. And I'll give you 2 horror story examples. They're not complete horror stories, but they're where people have missed out on being able to generate a specific larger amount of revenue for just either a stupid mistake or a misstep in their own personal brand. So I won't name who these athletes are, but these are real stories. One was there's an athlete that was booked to do a commercial for a major soft drink brand, and showed up on set the day of the shoot with a competitor brand literally in hand, like had a competitor brand in their hand. And it's just, that comes down to really lack of understanding and awareness. So if you're going to be a great brand partner, it has to go both ways. It's not about collecting a paycheck and just doing the thing that you're perceived to need to do to check a box. It's really understanding that brand, believing in that brand, and being a true ambassador and representative of that brand, and showing up completely aware of what you're walking into. So in some ways, we blame handlers or agents. You can't put the blame on anybody else as big as you are. This is an opportunity, and the opportunity isn't just a cash opportunity. This is long-term relationships. Just like athletes aren't going to play their sport forever, as a pro streamer, you have to understand that there's an opportunity to build real relationships in corporate environments that you could get passionate about and understand more about, and perhaps exit and find a full-time career and stream on the side. The other story is an athlete that really was trying to build in their 4 brand pillars. Health and wellness was a huge pillar of what they were doing. And they were pretty close to getting a larger deal with a health and wellness company, and had an opportunity to do a tweet for a fast food chain. And when they did that tweet for a fast food chain, it kind of killed the larger opportunity. And again, that's really taking a look at what is your story, what are your values that you've determined up front and you carry out through your entire brand strategy. If it doesn't fit that, if like one of your main 4 pillars is health and wellness, you can't do candy bar ads, you can't do, fast food chain ad. It just doesn't make sense. And to make a few $1,000s in one spot and lose a really strong long-term relationship, it's just it's a sad misstep, but it's a really important learning opportunity as well in being consistent.
I just love everything that you said right there in answering that question. So many great nuggets of wisdom, especially about like not collecting a paycheck and all these long-term relationships, because I feel like a lot of streamers, especially when they're starting out, they fall into this trap of getting brand endorsements right away and possibly saying yes to everything. I mean, I do have to admit that's very tempting, especially when you're trying to build this brand, you're trying to build media and hype around your own personal brand. So you feel like you have to say yes to everything. But I love what you're saying about how if you're really thinking about this long term, you have to streamline yourself as well. Because in order to make your brand sustainable, then you have to make sure that you're making the right partnerships along the way.
Yep. And I also say in terms of evaluating sponsorships, when you're just starting out, start local, start small, find people who believe in you and you truly authentically believe in their brand. And it might just be an in-kind sponsorship. So an in-kind sponsorship, if your audience, there might be people who don't know what that is, that's basically getting product in exchange for promoting the product with no cash involved. And that's a great way to start out because it creates viability. You can promote. Other potential sponsors are like, oh, these companies are buying in, and that gives you deepens your story, deepens your credibility, and now you can ask for money. Even some of the largest esports properties started out with very, very low dollar amounts with sponsorship, just a few $1,000s in sponsorship. Some of the biggest esports properties. So if you're a streamer, yes, there's some streamers that are making huge amounts of money. You have to be relevant to your own stats, your own demographics, and then start kind of there. And when I talk to a lot of the club teams, like the little the pro-ams and the club teams, I tell them to use the exact same sponsorship strategy that someone who is in a beauty pageant might use. It's these girls, they're getting sponsors, they're getting in-kind sponsors for their hair and their nails and their tanning. They're getting sponsors to fly them out to compete all over. And they're going to like the local butcher shop or the mom and pop towing company, right? I mean, take a look in your backyard and people that you might already have strategic connections with through your friends and family, and get them on board and introduce them to the world of esports and grow their audience. So it is a build, and being a streamer, it's something that you have to dedicate time and energy into every single day in order to continue to grow your audience and then grow the level of sponsorship that you can have.
Absolutely. I mean, especially I think in the streamers who do games, who stream video games, it might look like it's just fun all throughout, but it's a lot of work as well, especially when you're doing 4 or 5 hour streams, and you have to keep in mind that all throughout those 4 or 5 hours, you have to constantly be representing your online brand and your voice. Isn't that right?
Yeah, and sponsors want to see more than just stream numbers. They want to see YouTube numbers. They want to see what your social media engagement is. So being really thoughtful about how you're going to build that social media crossover with your stream and having continuity throughout all, that's a big job. Like that's almost a full-time job in itself, just managing to that. But there's tools out there that people can utilize. There's a lot of tools that people can utilize, like Maestro for your graphics. There's really.ai can take your clips and you use a dashboard to kind of pull out your best highlights, and then you can push those to, YouTube videos. So being aware of the tech that's going to shortcut you along the way is definitely advantageous to do. And maybe even having someone that that's maybe going to university for graphic design or social media, and making them a part of your little unofficial team, and giving them that level of experience to help you on social might be a benefit to some streamers. Then you kind of take a little bit of that pressure off, and it also removes you from those emotional knee-jerk reactions that you can have with your Twitter and your Instagram and your YouTube page as well. Someone else can be your little buffer.
That's a great tip. I'm taking note of that because I have to admit I am guilty of those knee-jerk reactions. Anyway, can you walk us through your thought process when coming up with a brand strategy?
Yes, and it's it's not like a mind-blowing process, but it's just what I think works for clients that I've built brand strategies for. And it's something that anyone who has any type of personal brand, whether it's their business LinkedIn page, can start thinking about how to approach their own brand strategy. So I really focus on 4 key areas, 4 key pillars. And this would be a great little starting point working session of building out like who you are holistically in your own brand story. So those 4 pillars, the first one is almost like your heart story or your personal, and you can discern how much you want people to know what's the most important in your life. So that would be, friends, family, your faith, being transparent and authentic. An example of that would be, Ninja and his wife, and really bringing her into his storyline, and it's really elevated her and her brand as well. And a lot of pro athletes want to be very guarded with that. They're very selective on it. But there's ways to weave in. I think the safest route is some of your friends or people who are also in the space that you align with, and how you have camaraderie there if you're not comfortable sharing anything about your faith or things about your family. The second pillar is your hobbies. These are hobbies that are outside of streaming or gaming or being an athlete or an entertainer in any way. So your hobbies might include that health and wellness or working out. It might be a totally different thing that you love to do, like surf. Being multidimensional is just so exciting for people, and being able to share those hobbies gives someone just a little bit more insight into what makes you special, what makes you tick. And furthermore, it broadens your audience, because people who are maybe really into that type of hobby, they're going to discover you. So you're getting discovered in totally different ways and channels. The third is your skill. So the game you play, streaming, that's your skill. That is definitely part of your brand, and it should be the driving force of your brand. And then the fourth is what you're passionate about. It might be a charity that you partner with. It could be just something that's really purpose-driven for you. I worked with a WNBA player, and she was extremely passionate about amplifying and encouraging young women in sports. So any single time there was an opportunity for her to share a story about a young female who was, breaking down barriers or doing amazing things, she was sharing that. And then furthermore, she was doing specific outreach to have one-on-one conversations, and even at one point brought a young woman to sit courtside at one of her WNBA games, and was able to do like an on-court experience and tie the team in. So those 4 brand pillars, I think, give a holistic view on personally who you are, and then how you choose to live that out, just as balance. So when you're building out what your consistency plan is of how often you're going to stream or what you're going to talk about, you can sprinkle those things through. If you think about taking a peek at somebody's Instagram page or their Twitter feed, you should be able, so from a sponsorship side, from a brand side, I want to be able to look at someone's social media and kind of scroll through. And I want to be able to know all 4 of these, kind of innately understand who you are, what you believe in, like your own, what's your why. And then people who believe in what you believe in are going to buy into you, and they're going to, deepen their engagement with you. So it's just finding that balance there. And How deep you go really depends on the platform you're on. I think anything business-wise is a great LinkedIn or eFuse strategy. If it comes down to, something that's like maybe a really long narrative, you just want to tell all about this thing you're really passionate about, maybe from a charity that you're partnering with, you could maybe dedicate 5 minutes before you stream to speak about it. You could also post that on YouTube. You could do a really lengthy Instagram post, or if anyone's still on Facebook anymore, I don't know if they are, Facebook's a great place to just talk like a grandma for 20 minutes. So I think that being able to really hone in, and it has to be authentic. I think where people are misguided and they make a lot of missteps is they're just throwing stuff at a wall to see if people are excited about it, or they're giving the wrong types of insights into their life, and then it confuses people about what you're all about. So being clear, documenting them, and then really just focusing on those 4 key areas.
Awesome. I love that. Personal story, hobbies, skill, passion. Those are all great tips. I do have a question though about passion. Is it possible for somebody to build a brand around several passions? I mean, what if you're passionate about so many things equally, and you have so many advocacies? Is there a chance that could backfire as well, or could it just
Well,
build up?
I think you want to be limited on how much you want to show, so you don't confuse the audience about what you're about. I mean, I do a lot of things, and I kind of struggle in that area as well, to be like, I do this and I do that. Like, I'm a dancer, I sing in the church choir, I'm a painter, I have a jewelry brand, I'm a designer, I do so many things, right? But if I'm being intentional about talking about esports strategy or branding, or working with an athlete, it's not super applicable, all of the deep things that I do on the creative side. So you have to really think about, what are the passions that I have that really are going to resonate or grow my audience. It all comes down to being applicable to where you're going to build revenue. Your job as a streamer, your job as an entertainer as a whole, is to entertain, is to drive revenue. I would say a really good friend of mine, John Thomas, who does player development at the Timberwolves, an NBA team here in Minnesota, he tells players, your job is to sell tickets. Your job's not to win games. Your job's to sell tickets. Your job's to be a really strong corporate partner with our sponsors within the team, and engage with them in a way that makes them excited to be there, because then they're going to continue to sponsor the team, which means the team's making money, which means the team's going to understand your value, and they're going to continue to pay you. So that comes down to really engaging, really high engagement with fans, and understanding that you are a product on a court and you are going to entertain your audience. And as a streamer, the streamers I think that are really being the most successful are the ones that know how to engage with their audience. They've got huge personalities, and they're consistent. They're completely consistent, except for, little nuances in hair colors and whatnot. But in terms of their value systems and how they're engaging with fans and how often they're engaging with fans, that consistency and that level of being an entertainer is paramount.
That's such good advice. I think especially for maybe the streamers that just jumped into it, maybe on a whim, maybe are just trying this out for the first time. So it's great that you're putting this into this conversation. Now, if say a streamer wants to work with big brands, what are some of the things that they should make sure of, like really cement in their brand when going through that strategy and going through that planning process?
I would first put a target list together of who are those brands that you desire to work with and why. And that kind of comes back to the story as well. Are there specific brands that you've just loved your whole life and you wear their gear just because you want to? Or there, maybe your hobby is you also skateboard and you want to work with like a Vans and you really want to bring them into your world. How do you identify what brands you think make sense the most for you, and then start living that out before you're even ready to get noticed. reaching out to the biggest brands, that's hard. Being attractive to really large brands, those are number games. Those teams have enormous marketing departments. They're going to be looking at all of your stats, all of your analytics. So if you're not being mindful of what your stats are and your analytics, then you already lost. So if you're really taking a look at this as a large business, then you need to be all in, and you need to understand what's working, what's not, where am I getting engagement, what happened at that point, where are people dropping off, what did I do at that time, what's going on, what's behind the scenes, am I alienating specific audiences, am I not being inclusive. Growing your fan base will grow your opportunities to work with a sponsor. So you always have to be diligent to understand the back end of your brand, the stats and the analytics.
Right, right. And then a couple more questions before we open the floor to our audience, who I think are very, very eager to start asking questions of their own. I wanted to ask, how do you represent your own brand and a commercial brand at once without losing that personal branding that you work so hard on?
Your corporate brand, that's your skills pillar, right? Like that, they have to intersect, they have to weave together. They don't have to be the same. It's just that all comes down to authenticity. You can't say, well, a lot of people really like this cool thing over here, so I'm going to make that a part of my brand because so many people are into it. If you're not into it, it's not going to resonate. Everyone's going to call you out, right? Like, you just really have to be authentic. And maybe you just aren't that interested in things. I've worked with pro athletes that we go through this exercise and they're like, I'm boring. Like, what? I don't have any passions. I don't know any charity that I would ever donate to. I don't know anything about any charities. And then we just start talking. We just go in deep. It's almost like getting to know a friend and going, well, wait a minute, didn't your uncle have this thing? And how did that impact you? And how did that make you feel? So, perhaps we should go talk to the people at Leukemia and Lymphoma Society and understand how they're making research that is affecting everybody through blood research, and maybe that could have helped your uncle or impacted you in this other way. You really have to kind of dig deep to find these things that are special. It is work to kind of figure out what makes you tick. It's very introspective, and sometimes it is like, I think I said it before about sitting down with like a trusted friend or a family member to be like, how do you see me? Like, what makes me tick? What are, like, how do you, where am I off? Where am I succeeding? Where do I need to really, fine tune my approach? And always be willing to grow and evolve. Determining what your personal brand is and your brand strategy is doesn't mean that you become stagnant and sterile. You evolve and the world evolves with you. So you can kind of ebb and flow out of that. It's really just like a benchmark. Also figuring out what your values are and being really true to your values. I've seen streamers, I've read the articles about streamers who have, really hurt feelings, even with this COVID, saying off-color comments or, being cold or ingenuine about what's happening right now in the world can kill a brand. And so, what are those things that you really maybe would even be a negative trigger point for you that you can identify up front? And I think, probably your siblings or a best friend would be a really great person to call you out on, here's the mirror, and this is what you need to understand. And maybe these are two things you need to start working on in order to be a little bit more approachable and accepted by a larger audience.
I don't know if you saw, but I just got chills during that whole segment. You just gave me chills, Rebecca. That it's so true. And it feels like, before starting a personal brand, you have to do a lot of soul searching, but it really is that. I mean, if you're putting yourself out there, you have to be completely sure of who you are. Now, one last question before we open the floor to our audience. I want to know, since you brought up COVID-19 and everybody, the whole world being affected by it, in which direction do you think the partnership between big brands or small brands, even brands in general, and streamers, all of these, little personalities and influencers, where do you think that's going within this next year? Because I have a feeling that a lot of brands, their 2020 plans just kind of went out the window within the past few weeks.
Yeah, they did. And in talking with larger retail brands that I'm connected with, and even some B2B service level brands, what they're doing now, many of them are building out their 2021 strategy. And esports is definitely a big bucket there, because we don't know when traditional sports and entertainment is going to happen. And they have, in order to stay relevant, you need to have a really strong marketing strategy. You have to communicate in front of an audience, and the world is completely fixated right now on esports. I've been working 12 to 14-hour days. It's been really tiring. I'm doing calls on even weekends, trying to come alongside brands big and small to not only educate them on the space, but put together a thoughtful process for them, in order for them to build out a strategy and help them build out a strategy, so that when their budgets open up, which might happen before 2021, but really we're kind of starting there, they know kind of where they should be playing within esports. And that comes down, so from the brand side, what we're looking at on the brand side is, who is our existing consumer? What does that audience persona or profile look like? And there's usually a multitude of them. There's a range, like maybe it starts at like 13, it goes all the way up to 85. But where's the peaks? Where are those peaks? Identifying those peaks, that's your key audience. Now you take a look at that key audience and you say, okay, this is really who's using our products the most. Can we find a clone within esports that behaves in the same manner, is maybe the same age, demographic, class, household income, and the same types of behaviors in terms of what they're consuming, that now we can target them appropriately within esports, whether it's, tournaments, or right now there's a lot of digital tournaments. There's a huge charity play coming to the surface, and or getting your product. Maybe you don't have a lot of money, but getting your product in the hands of streamers and gamers that are going to be able to help promote it in this weird time. And there's layers and layers and layers and layers within corporations that have consumer product goods. Consumer product goods are going to be the biggest winner for a streamer. So take a look at, walk through the aisles of Target and start taking a look at some of these companies. And one thing Target does is they put some of the newest test products on their end caps. So if you see some type of a brand at Target and an end cap that you never saw before, it might be worth reaching out with your media kit and saying, here's my media kit, whether it's 1 page or 4 pages long. This is what I do. These are the games I play. This is the audience that watches those games. All these statistics are available. And this is why I think I'd be a really great fit. Can we talk about in-kind sponsorship or sponsorship, overall? So it's like the longest answer ever to a question that I don't even remember what the question was, but those are all the answers.
No, I think you answered it really well. Interesting that consumer goods are suddenly skyrocketing to the top of everything. But right now, in this new normal, in this new environment, it totally makes sense. And Rebecca, you are just getting my brain ticking so much right now. I'm going to throw it to the audience now, because my brain is just fuel to the fire. Thank you so much. So TJ Henley in our audience right now says that one of the big problems that I have is hearing that you need to stream 5 days a week or whatever. I know where you're coming from, TJ. I did that before. It's exhausting. Now, TJ has a family and a full-time job with a child on the way. That being said, I work hard to make my content better and advertise constantly along with other things. What would you say for someone who wants to be taken seriously but can only stream 3 days a week or for a few hours?
if you have a full-time job and you have a family, that needs to rise above everything else. And your audience might shift a bit, but it sounds like his focus isn't on being a full-time streamer. So he doesn't have to behave like a full-time streamer. He can grow his audience by maybe being really thoughtful on deliberate and intentional about what's going to be the context within those 3 days. Consistency, maybe even planning it out, and then create a program around it. Maybe you stream on Monday evenings, and Monday evenings you always have a different fun guest that you bring on, whether it's just a friend that's starting out or someone else within the space that you're a fan of, that you can do something together or have a guest. Or maybe there's just specific things that you do repeatedly in terms of what you're sharing about your life. Being a dad and somebody who's working full time, that's part of your story. So maybe people that are also in that same space, you can kind of create a little brotherhood with and a kinship with, and support one another. So it's not about the masses. It's about what's unique to you and building that out. The sun's coming. Thank you. Starting to build that out and finding, people who are going to resonate with you, people who believe in what you believe. Other family men that want to watch your stream are going to tune in as well. So you don't have to follow the exact model that all of the top streamers are following. You find your niche.
That's right. And it goes hand in hand with what you said earlier about being authentic and knowing your personal story. If your personal story says that, you have to spend 70% of your time with your family and only 30% streaming, then that's what you go with, right?
Right. I mean, the best basketball players in the world are playing every single day. That doesn't mean that you can't have a rec league or put a little, a club team together and compete. You're just not probably going to compete at that same level. You have other things going on, right? So, give yourself some grace.
That's awesome advice. TJ, I hope you got your answer right there. Now, ACG137 says, when approaching brands as a neophyte streamer or creator, what would be the best ideal practice? I guess maybe what's the number one thing that neophyte streamers should be doing to get noticed by big brands?
Well, content's important. I think when you're trying to approach a brand, you need to be able to articulate who you are in a really concise way. So I think a media kit, everyone should have one. And you should continually update it as your numbers grow. Brands, you have just moments to get in front of that person to see. They're not going to go to your channel and start watching you and looking for themselves. You need to pull that data. You need to put it together. You need to have your story clear, and present it in a way that they can digest. So a simple media kit, even if it's just a one-pager that talks about you, who you are, what your interests are. These are your social channels. These are the numbers. This is your peak, concurrent, number of viewers, and having all of that ready before you approach a brand. Having that as the leave behind or even the lead in to having conversations with brands.
That's right. You need to show them that if you do work with them, you're prepared. You're prepared. You've got everything figured out. You've got everything backed up and everything. So Mind Games, TV. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if you're proactively going after sponsorships, you should build out a sponsorship deck, and you should be really clear of what areas are sponsorable for you particularly. And there's a lot of resources to kind of see what some of those look like. If there's particular people who want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, I can kind of even send a quick little bulleted list of these are some of the things that if you're putting together a sponsorship deck, you should think about. But what are those areas and what are those moments that you can what are they getting in return? We haven't even talked about that. What are you giving a sponsor in return? Identifying those areas and being really clear, not over promising and under delivering, being clear that you can deliver on those promises for them.
Guys, Rebecca just gave you an open invitation. You can contact her, and we'll be sure to link, of course, to your social media handles, possibly in the show notes for this or in GGWP Academy's Facebook or YouTube in this stream. Now, Mind Games Yo TV says, for a newbie streamer, who do you know who to network with, how to get viewer retention and loyalty, and what are your opinions on different streaming platforms in terms of streamer benefits? Has a message for you too, Rebecca. Thank you, Rebecca. I'm about to build my first streaming PC at the moment, and I'm passionate about parkour training and sharing jazz music to people. Mind Games, I'm sold already. Parkour training and sharing jazz music.
Yeah,
That's
right?
awesome already.
I love it. So in terms of, different platforms, you just have to find what works for you. There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. You need to just test different things out, see what feels right, what's working for you. And you need to focus on creating amazing content, showing your personality to the world, and things will happen organically. They will happen over time. I mean, if you wanted to really put dollars behind things and start promoting yourself through social media, you could do that. Finding people who have maybe larger numbers than you and partnering with them on specific things and getting on their channels to grow your channel. It's hard. It's really hard. My son is 13 and he's a gamer, and he's had to really learn to be unafraid of talking to people in business settings. He's 13, but he's a little businessman. So when I was growing up, my mom would always say, just do it afraid. Even like ordering food at a restaurant when I was a kid, I was so afraid to do it. I was like, no, Mom, just give me chicken nuggets, please. And she was like, no, you need to like say it. You need to do it. It's hard. Rejection is hard. You're going to get hundreds of no's before you get any type of yes, or just ghosted. Like, people don't respond to you. Don't let it skip a beat in your step, and do it afraid. Reach out to them afraid. Put the ask out afraid. Because you're not any farther along than had you never tried. And also, building an authentic relationship before the ask is important. How can you add value, and how can you have something that's genuine before being like, well, would you want to do the thing? I think LinkedIn is really powerful, and eFuse is extremely powerful in creating your brand from a business strategy. And that's what's going to be really attractive to any type of sponsor.
Rebecca, you are making my heart soar. Do it afraid. That is absolutely right. And especially in this new environment, I mean, everybody I think is afraid right now. We are stepping into the unknown. We have no idea where 2020 is going. And Double XP actually has a good question to follow up to that. Living in this era of uncertainty, when is it necessary to rebrand? Because I have a feeling that a lot of people thought they had things figured out, and then suddenly this curveball, this black swan event comes in, and they might see themselves rebranding. Is there a right time to do that? Is it going to be weird if you suddenly pull the plug on something?
No, I think now is a really great time to rebrand. Building any type of strategy, brand strategy, creative strategy. One of the largest media companies in Minnesota just announced their rebrand yesterday. I think now is a phenomenal time. You have to do it in a thoughtful way, and you want to announce it. You want to tell people you've rebranded and why. And I think branding, look and feel are so important. Having a really clean, elevated brand makes you look like you're legit. There's a lot of, $100 logos out there that are really bad and very clip arty. And if you can take the time, if you're not completely swamped, to really take a peek at that brand that you have, whether it's just a logo refresh or really your overall brand strategy, now would be a really great time to just devote a couple hours a day to really dive in on that, and then announce it. And there's a captive audience to share that with, but there's also a ton of content out there, so it's not like it's going to be like super jarring to the world if you rebrand.
That's right. We're living in very strange times right now. So I guess now more than ever is a good time to find maybe a different voice, maybe a more compassionate voice. Jumping off of that, though, let's say COVID-19 never happened and we're going along, our previous lives as was supposed to be. Um, how does somebody rebrand, or like when is it necessary? Is it because like a personal brand might be failing or sending a wrong message?
There's two key points in a brand's life cycle that I think you have to take a look and say, we're going to need to maybe elevate things, or throw this away and start over. It's when you've hit a plateau and there's literally no growth, or when things are on a decline. Those are the two biggest times in which you have to take a look at your brand and say, are we just missing the mark, or is it outdated? If you're just still going up and up and up and up, you have to be extremely careful because your audience can reject you. So that's usually a brand refinement. You see a lot of the larger companies just refining their logo, or cleaning up the font to be a little bit more modern or up with the times. But if you feel stagnant, if you're not really getting the numbers that you want, or if you're kind of on a decline, it might be worth your time to invest in putting together a really clean look and feel, a really nice brand that is a reflection of you.
That's right. That's right. I think authenticity, as you mentioned earlier, also is part of that as well. Okay, one more question from Reversal over here. What can a streamer ask for when negotiating for a sponsorship deal? That's a really good question.
Yeah. You know, money aside, I think what you ask for from the sponsor, it's really, you have to identify what those sponsorable areas are. And then it really depends on where you are in your growth about what value you put on each and everything. We've worked with brands, with streamer brands who, they want an updated look and feel, and then in exchange, then our brand is on their stream. Our logo's right there. They talk about us, right? I think you can identify what is it, whether it's in kind. Maybe the brand that you're working with is X Rocker and they gave you your chair, and you're sitting in it, you're talking about it. Maybe it's your gear, your headset, the clothes that you wear. What are those areas? And then you have to understand from a business perspective, what's your value, and then break those things down into how are you going to reach those numbers. You don't want to give every sponsorable deliverable to one sponsor and then not be able to grow. So you have to build some layers into that, and diversify. I think it's a little bit more difficult as a streamer than it is as like an esports property that does live events, and there's all these layers to it. It can be like, oh, you can just have this one little space. But if you're doing programmatic streaming, so say you're putting together like the Monday night guest spot, you could have a sponsor just specifically doing that one type of stream weekly or monthly. So getting a little bit creative of what is ownable within your stream and within your presence could be important. It could be a sign behind you, or trinkets and trash on a shelf, or eating beef jerky while you're streaming and talking about the beef jerky brand and being authentic. I think as a streamer, you don't want to look like you're pulling the wool over your eyes. You can be like, yo, guys, I'm eating this beef jerky because they're paying me to do this beef jerky and it's amazing and you should try it. And you can order on Amazon, and here's the link. Like, be authentic, be transparent. If people know, like, hey, the only way I'm going to make money is if you guys like this, or you follow this, or you go to their thing. This is the call to action. Do the thing for me so that I can keep doing the thing that we all love. That's kind of how you can marry those two worlds together.
That is absolutely right. And I love what you said about being authentic, because I think like putting yourself online, it's so easy for people to, find out when you're faking it, or when you might not be genuine about your message. I mean, it's so easy to do background checks these days.
Yeah.
And
There's
yeah,
in Wayne's World, just like that super funny movie from, like, I don't know, the 90s. In Wayne's World, there's a moment where they're in like decked out in all of this gear, like Adidas full body outfit, and they're like drinking Coke and eating chips. And it's like the most overtly evident. It's like literally one of the funniest brand clips where they're like just calling out all of the sponsorship placement. So we knew then about sponsorship placement and product placement. And this is like, you're a streamer and gamers, it's the most hyper sophisticated audience out there. You just can't be inauthentic. You just have to be transparent, because you're right, you'll get called out so fast.
That's all right, Rebecca. Thank you so much for this. So many nuggets of wisdom, so much to work on, and so much material for people to build on. Going back to your invitation earlier about people messaging you directly, maybe I think your inbox is going to be full after this. Where can people find you if they want to reach out to you online?
LinkedIn is the best place for me. That's where I do most of my business engagement. If someone's not emailing me directly, my LinkedIn's a really good spot to reach out. And I do love connecting with people and, helping them move forward and kind of, fill those little gaps where I can, or make the next step connection that's going to get them where they need to be. So.
That's awesome. So guys, there's your open invitation. Find Rebecca Longawa on LinkedIn and she will reply to all of you. Thank you so much,
Thank
Rebecca.
you.
I swear this conversation had me in chills half the time. There's a lot to think about. There is a lot to reformat, I think, in the way we approach ourselves and the way we approach ourselves, our personal brands online. And thank you also to our audience for being so participative and for tuning in from wherever in the world you guys are. I have been Mika, and thank you once again. I hope to see you in our next AMA session, and stay tuned to GGWP Academy for more insights from the best in the gaming and streaming and esports world. Thank you guys, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, guys, that was great.
Cassie back in. Thank you, Cassie.
That was
Rebecca,
great, guys.
I'm serious. That was amazing advice. I'm gonna rethink a lot of things now.
It's hard work. Like, I mean, I'm consistent on LinkedIn, but in other areas, I'm like, meh, but I'm not trying to be I'm not trying to be a public figure, a celebrity.